On April 8, 1943, at an altitude of 27,000 feet above France, the oxygen mask could not conceal the amusement on the face of Oberleutnant Ralph Hermican. From the crystal-clear cockpit of his Focke-Wulf 190, the veteran ace watched the ungainly silhouettes laboriously climbing toward his formation. He radioed his wingman, unable to suppress his laughter, joking that the Americans had sent flying milk bottles against them. Below, 16 P-47C Thunderbolts of the 4th Fighter Group struggled upward, their 2,000 horsepower engines straining against the aircraft's 7-ton weight. To the German pilots, accustomed to the sleek lines of Spitfires and nimble Soviet fighters, these corpulent American machines appeared almost comical. They saw barrel-shaped fuselages, topped with greenhouse canopies, wings that seemed disproportionately small, and propellers that dwarfed anything in their own inventory. What the wolves, circling above, did not realize was that they were witnessing the arrival of a weapon that would systematically dismantle their fighter arm within 18 months. These objects of derision were destined to transform into instruments of terror, their 8 Browning machine guns becoming the most feared sound in the skies over Europe. The mathematics of destruction were already loaded into those broad wings, 3,400 rounds of ammunition, and a combined rate of fire of 6,000 rounds per minute. This was enough concentrated firepower to saw a Messerschmitt in half in less than 2 seconds. The transformation began that morning when Major Donald Blakesley, commanding the 335th Fighter Squadron, spotted the German formation and positioned for attack. A veteran who had transferred from RAF Spitfires, he understood what his men had yet to learn. Survival in this new machine required abandoning every conventional notion of air combat. The Thunderbolt represented a radical departure from traditional fighter design philosophy. While the Germans had pursued lightweight interceptors optimized for climb and maneuverability, the designers at Republic Aviation had created something unprecedented. A high-altitude juggernaut that utilized sheer mass and firepower to redefine the rules of engagement. Among the 56 American pilots spread across the sky were men who would become legends. But on this day, they were novices in an untested machine facing the most experienced fighter force in the world. This story illustrates how industrial logic triumphed over tactical brilliance, and how quantity and quality merged into overwhelming superiority. It is the account of how the laughter of German pilots turned to horror as they discovered what synchronized machine guns could do to an aircraft at 400 yards. The P-47 had emerged from a panic in 1940 as German fighters swept across France, born from an urgent request for a high-altitude interceptor capable of matching the enemy's best. Alexander Kartveli, the chief designer, created a monster that redefined what was possible. He admitted to his team that it would be a dinosaur, but a dinosaur with good proportions. The prototype that first flew in May 1941 shocked everyone. At nearly 10,000 pounds empty, it weighed 65% more than its predecessor. Its massive turbo-supercharger system gave it a bulky appearance, leading test pilots to invariably ask if the thing could actually fly. Not only did it fly, but it also performed like nothing else at high altitude. The 18-cylinder radial engine could maintain full power at 27,000 feet, where German fighters struggled for air. The turbo-supercharger delivered sea-level performance in the stratosphere, a feat impossible for conventional designs. However, the aircraft was initially despised by commanders. In training, it killed more Americans than Germans would in the first months of combat, due to its unforgiving handling characteristics. Those who mastered it, however, discovered something extraordinary. Pilots described the experience as strapping themselves to a locomotive, noting that you didn't fly the aircraft so much as aim it. Early combat encounters confirmed every German prejudice. the Thunderbolt couldn't turn with a Focke-Wulf or climb with a Messerschmitt. The enemy quickly developed tactics to exploit these weaknesses, attacking from below and forcing turning fights where agility mattered more than power. Yet, something strange was happening in those early encounters that German intelligence failed to notice. The P-47s that were shot down had absorbed incredible punishment before falling. One aircraft returned with over 100 bullet strikes, damage that would have disintegrated a lighter fighter. More significantly, when the Thunderbolts did bring their guns to bear, the results were catastrophic, creating a convergence zone of destruction that German pilots had never experienced. The event that began to change perceptions occurred in June 1943, involving Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson. His formation was ambushed by 16 Focke-Wulfs diving from the sun. Caught in the crossfire, Johnson's aircraft took catastrophic damage. Cannon shells exploded across the fuselage, hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit, and fire erupted. Trapped in a dying aircraft at 27,000 feet with a jammed canopy, he managed to level the machine and pointed toward home. What followed was one of the most extraordinary encounters in aerial warfare. A lone German pilot found the crippled Thunderbolt and emptied his entire cannon load into it. Johnson, unable to evade, huddled behind his armor plate. The German, having exhausted his cannon shells, fired his machine guns until they too were empty. He pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck, shook his head in amazement, and peeled away. Johnson landed with an engine that failed on the runway. His crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. This survival sent shockwaves through both air forces. American engineers realized they had underestimated the ruggedness of their creation, while German intelligence initially refused to believe reports that any aircraft could withstand such punishment. By July 1943, American pilots were learning to exploit the P-47's true strengths. Never turn, never climb with the enemy, but use weight and power. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, it could reach speeds that left pursuers helplessly behind. This tactic, known as the boom and zoom, changed the dynamic of the air war. Thunderbolts would climb higher than German fighters could effectively operate, then roll over and dive, reaching speeds that made deflection shooting impossible for the defenders. At the bottom of these dives, the wall of lead from their heavy machine guns created an impenetrable zone of destruction. Aircraft caught in this convergence didn't just fall, they disintegrated. By early 1944, a new variant arrived, with paddle blade propellers that transformed the aircraft's performance. The climb rate increased dramatically, allowing the heavy fighters to match the enemy at most altitudes. The new propellers also changed the sound of the aircraft. The blade tips reached supersonic speeds, creating a distinctive roar that could be heard for miles. German ground troops learned to identify this deep, threatening rumble as the sound of impending death. As the war progressed, the Thunderbolt proved its versatility, becoming the most feared ground attack aircraft in the German arsenal. Its ability to carry a bomb load equal to a medium bomber, combined with high-velocity rockets, turned it into flying artillery. German tank commanders watched in terror as columns of vehicles were obliterated in seconds. The psychological impact was devastating. Troops called them jarbos and feared them more than any other Allied weapon. The ultimate vindication of the design came in encounters with German jet fighters. While the jets were faster, Thunderbolt pilots discovered they could catch them during takeoff or in high-speed dives. The heavy machine guns proved surprisingly effective against the fragile jets, tearing them apart with concentrated fire. By the end of the war, the P-47 had destroyed thousands of enemy aircraft and vehicles, proving that a machine once laughed at as a flying milk bottle had become the architect of the Luftwaffe's destruction.